It's Sunday morning. It's Saturday morning. I'm lying to you. And that's how we do it. Welcome to the Art of Rock. It's Saturday, June 1st. Oh my God, it's June already. And thank you all for being alive. I want to first and foremost acknowledge the Tongva people as the traditional landowners of Los Angeles. And they are awesome. And thank you for being amazing. This is the Art of Rock. Every Saturday we are here. Art of Rockifying. What? Fuck off, man. I'm just not having good juju with internet and shit today. Every Saturday morning we're here at this time, at this place. On Twitch is probably the best place to watch, but people are watching on YouTube or whatever else. Thank you. This is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. Many members are here. Thank you so much for coming. You keep me going. I'm going to try and keep you going. You're bloody awesome. The new album that I'm fucking all excited about is Ice Planet 9000, the second album, called Star Chamber. Kitty, welcome. It's there. Go get it. I'm really proud of it. It's kind of ambient. It's weird. I don't really know what sort of music it is. Now they're calling it aggressive Berlin School or something. I don't know what the fuck that means. The Industrial Incisions playlist is a whole bunch of really cool music that you should know about. And it's just great. And you should join it. And please do. And I got some other people I'm going to bring on in here. Many of the artists on Industrial Incision are here. And it's fantastic. And if you want more music that's fantastic, get involved with MTV TV because it's mind-blowingly brilliant. Boom, there. And after this, we're going to rate to MTV TV because it's fantastic. Everything is fantastic. Look at the fantasticness of it all. And they've also got a Patreon. So fucking help them out because we got to keep that shit going. I made a personal thing recently that I wasn't going to swear anymore, and as you can see, I'm not doing very well on that. Hello and welcome to the Art of Rock. I got something fantastic I want to talk about. Fuck you, I don't know what's going on. I don't care anymore. Okay, so here's what I want to talk about. Last night, so everyone can hear me all right? Great. I mixed a show last night, and one of the performers was a young man named Jamal who was on America's Got Talent or The Voice or something like that. Brilliant singer, like really good. Like, man, that kid was great. Anyway, I made this realization while I was watching this fucking guy bring it, that the idea, what you need behind your art is a greater idea. Like you need something great, an idea that is driving the art. Like the ability or the desire to encourage a community, to encourage a person, to something great, where the art is just it is just an overflow from an idea that's greater than you are. We could talk about that or not. Raziel, I see your hand.
I just started the first couple chapters of the Rick Rubin reads his own book, audiobook, and he talks like that too. He talks about, well, I just started it, so I'm going to say things that people who have heard the whole thing are familiar with, and people who it's familiar stuff. It's like the ideas are out there and you put yourself in a ready state of being able to channel them and you process them and turn them into your own. And that's so simple, and that's the artist. And I don't know what more there is to say about it. What moved you about this person's expression in particular?
The thing that blew my mind about this person was they had a desire to heal. the person had healing energy, and that energy was in their songs. It was in their and it was sincere. It was real, and you could the person on the stage. Besides, fuck, that guy could sing. I don't say that lightly either. That motherfucker could sing. You could tell that this person wanted to heal. He wanted to heal people. He wanted to I've given up on this. He wanted people to be a part of a healing experience. And it was the most fantastic thing. Now, do you want me to throw it back to you at this stage, or do I throw it back to Aaron? Because I haven't had enough coffee. Go, Raziel.
I had some thoughts as you were saying it, but I think there's a lot more to explore there, and I want to hear what Aaron has to say, but thank you for the opportunity. I'll come back to it.
Pleasure, baby. Thank you. Aaron, go.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you have to be obsessed to the point where you're like, okay, I'm gonna field this to everyone in a 3-mile radius, and if they don't dig on what I'm selling, then fucking whatever. Next thing, like, you know what I mean? Like, you just keep going. Like, you can't get discouraged at the fact that it may not resonate with everybody, but you get to the you're so obsessed with it that you've just a poignant example is I went to see an OTEP show. And Shemaya Otep's been doing this for a better part of like 20 years. But you could tell, like, when she hit the stage, like, there was a genuine want to meet with her core audience. She wanted to engage with people. There are really intense songs, and then there are other songs where she can bring the room down. But you could just tell, like, her entire being is like, she just had this mentality of being like a metal veteran that's like, I came to fucking crush it. And I don't care if there's 30 people in the room or 2,000 people in the room. It's like, I just came to bring the fucking heat. No fastballs, no curveballs. Like, she just like laser focused. Like, we're fucking doing this. And it was amazing to see. Instead of just kind of, somebody's just going through the motions. And all this was on the back of her opener decided to bail on the gig. He was just like too good for it. So he's like, fuck all this. So they just pretty much took the guard and was like, okay, I guess we're the headliner. Let's fucking go. It was so cool to see.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you. Rezi, go.
Yeah, Aaron helped clarify a little bit toward where I was thinking. There are so many different ways to connect with an artist, and you're kind of talking about live performance, and I'm brought to mind for some reason people whose performance is aloof and cold and calculated and stoic and doesn't have a healing vibe at all, but it has something else charismatic. And then I'm thinking of people who are very talented with the voice alone and can evoke things not through their physical presence. They're just, that's some dude. That's all right, cool. But listen to the voice. And there's some people who do this through things that we're not even talking about performance and singing, but let's try to stick to that, who have the whole package and they just have that star magnetism and you do feel drawn to them. And I know I'm leaving out the healing component because I don't quite have it yet, like in touch with it as a performance, because I feel like all art is healing for the artist and recipient in some ways, but I want to think more about it. The main thing that came to mind is there is that breadth of people that have a remarkable something that varies so much and that people respond to in so many different ways, to like leave the space open for thinking about that a little bit. I don't know if that makes more to talk about or.
Yeah, I feel that okay. So I'll explain my situation again, my epiphany, because I think forgive me, I didn't do a very good job. The epiphany that I've had, and you may disagree with this or not, is that the idea that drives the artist, not the stage presence, not the music. I am talking about the idea. Remember those ideas, those things that are more dangerous than anything else in the world, the idea, the thing that you just can't kill, the idea. When the idea drives an artist, and when that idea pushes itself through all music, all art, all everything, the idea drives the whole thing. My idea is you are better than this. That's the idea that drives me. You are better. Not me personally, but you. You are better. That's why everything I do is about encouragement, or I try to. It is about inner strength, and it's about defiance, because you're better. And I'm finding, and I saw somebody hone it, bring it, master it, like ninja skill, like to the point of it being religious or spiritual. Like when this person's the idea that drove this person's music was quite, it was real, it was there. And the thing about it is that when you are like that, it can really help you get out of writer's block. What am I going to do with this song? What's this song doing? What's it all about? What's it Where are you going with this? And I think that's where I'm leading to this is, what is your what is your idea? And I'm talking about a grand idea, not, gee, I hope everyone's doing good tonight and I can entertain people and make people feel better. I'm talking about something, I'm talking about an idea that could get you into trouble. This is all going straight to Rage Against the Machine, isn't it? Razi, get me out of this.
You got me into that. I totally get where you're coming from now. That and I hope everybody who's got a camera on them right now has an answer for this, because I understand the importance. I don't think I have a dangerous idea, except in the very personal sense. And if there was one thing that I was always trying to say and always trying to communicate in the act of making something for people to listen to, it's, yeah, this hurts, other people hurt, and here's how it the agony goes, and maybe we can connect on that, and maybe you can have some catharsis through it. And that might be an emotional hurt, it might be a physical hurt, it might be a world threat, an existential kind of thing. So it's pretty flexible where I'm coming from. But I think that's the closest I can get to hopefully that vibes right on what you're talking about in some way.
Yes. Aaron, I see. Thank you, Rezi. Aaron, I see your hand.
I'll find the link and I'll put it in the chat. But there's, I get what you mean, to where there's something about somebody getting in a groove to where it's infectious, and you find the genuine joy that they have in doing it, no matter how weird or how awkward it might seem at first. Because there's a girl that's a Hawaiian artist, and she's walking down the street, and she's got kind of a mobile looper rig, and she's harmonizing with her voice, and she's laying down beats, and she's stacking, and she's adding and adding and adding and adding and singing over top of it. But all you can hear, like, you can hear it from her recording, but to the outside world, it's like she's just got cans on her head, she's walking with this freaking headset and just laying it down. But the thing that she's making piecework is just incredible. And again, you can see how much joy that she has in doing it. And then at the end, you could tell that it took multiple takes, because at the very end, she's like grooving, and she was like, I think I got it. I think I got it. Like, fuck yeah, dude. Oh, we did it. We fucking did it, man. But all the while, she's just threading through the city sidewalk and just passing people, just kind of like, hey, how are you? How you doing? And it's just so cool just to see her work and in her element, and she's bringing joy to people on the street. But then she's also like, if you're tuning in, I've got a hell of a video for you to, and a composition for you to hear. Oh.
Thank you. Rob, what you got?
You hear me okay?
Beautifully.
Yeah, I think this is more than a motivation. This should be a comfortable obsession. You should be comfortably obsessed with something. And what that means is if you've got an idea for a concept album that drives you for years to perfect it and get it right. And, you know, Adam Bombs talked about his closet taking him 10 years or more to perfect what he wants to get down. That's an obsession. And I think that's something that people can be passionate about. And that is a healthy obsession which drives you and it motivates you personally because you love it so much. It's got to be a healthy obsession.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. That's really true. And so another thing to think about is if you had a healthy obsession, if you had this drive, that this core idea, what would it be? And you know, we don't have to talk about that today. But understand that my motivation for bringing you up is that, you know, sometimes, man, your little boat is stuck in the middle of the ocean and there's no wind. You can make the wind by that idea that you have is so great that it can force a gale. I guess that's what I'm trying to pass on here, the possibilities of that fantasticness. Does anybody want to jump on here, or I've got another one that I'd love to talk to you about as well. I see the hand of Brett.
Hey,
And thank you, Brett, for this fucking help this week. Oh my God, thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries, man, no worries. So along I think along the lines, I might be missing the point here a little bit, but I think inspiration or inspirational people come in a lot of different shapes and forms and styles. You know, the person you're talking about last night, I'm interested in checking them out if that's information you have. You know, because you know that's going to be one of those things that, I mean, there's like Jacob here. We're in a band, and as well, he's the other half of God. Nonetheless, one of the things that he comes from is a lot more of a hip hop world, and there's an entire different community there.
Well, not just hip hop,
Well, yeah, I know,
but
not just. I was just pointing that out as kind of a difference a little bit between us. But and to that point, you know, those inspirations end up leading a lot of different directions and a lot of different ideas. So you know, what may be like healing from one artist, maybe is, you know, for another artist, or when you're listening to another artist, maybe catharsis is kind of a better, or not a better, but another way of approaching it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay, yeah, I'm just looking for this artist and I can't seem to find it. But anyway, hey, thanks for this. Hey, I got another one I want to bring up. And that is the in the bass. I've been listening to artists that do different things with the bass. They don't just sit on the one, but they sit on the one and the three, and it provides this really beautiful it's a really pretty emotion. Like it puts a bent on the question. You know how sometimes music it's asked a question, it gives an answer. Well, if you go to the one, if you're playing the bass on the third or the fifth, you start answering with different inflections on the question. I just want to throw it out to people's thoughts on that, and using that as a creative to use that, you know, to add it to your toolkit. Because a really fun thing to do with this is when you've got when you've got something on the boil, it might be a drone, for example, but the drone and the drone might be in D. But instead of the chord over the top of it being D, major or minor, whatever, you might be droning a D flat. So the chord over the top is a B flat. So as a result, there's this already this emotional thing being set up, or you might be moving between a B flat and a G. So it's the D is the third of the B flat, and then you go to the G where it's the fifth of the G. You know what I mean? So it's creating this start, and then to resolve that at the end of a phrase, you might then fall to the D, where there might be some magical solo or something. Jizzle, welcome. Chisel, I hope I said your name right. Welcome. I see your hand. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Cheers. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yeah, thank you.
I want to say props to Razi for inviting me. He was my roommate in college, and yet he still talks to me. So clearly, I didn't leave enough skunks in the room that one time.
I remember every smell.
Anyway, I just want to say it's so great to be here with y'all and just a fascinating conversation. I think my what I was going to say, my point was sort of to what your first point was, Carl, but I think lends to this because just a brief background about me. I primarily like electronic, like bordering on the experimental, but with a lot of like dub reggae, dub elements, and like OTEC or Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada are like my favorites. But I've been listening to more music, not just outside of the genre, but just of like anything I can get my hands on to really just expose myself to other things and inputs that I just don't I wouldn't normally come across. I'm a big fan of accident and happenstance, from our Lord and Savior Brian. I have my Oblique Strategies cards here somewhere. But anyway, my quicker point was that like something I'm really fascinated with, and I discovered in the last year, is recordings from the early '60s of bands playing coca leaves from Peru, and so it sounds like sort of the stereotypical, South American music you would see in like a shitty '50s music, but over it, this very sort of beautiful, diverse harmonica. It's really interesting. I'll see if I can find a link. I'll send it to you. But that has kind of sent me to think about other, how artists express themselves and sort of what we want to get across. At the same time I'm listening to that, I'm also listening to I'm getting back into some metal. So I've been listening to a lot of Tomb Mold, which is fucking like rad. I think Mark, I don't even remember Razi, every so often, like I would just appear with like a metal album, and I think he'd be like, "Oh God, okay, all right," but it was nothing compared to later roommates. But anyway, but it's fascinating. And when you start, we're talking about the bass, like, yeah, man, like I also do a lot of drum and bass, and I'm well familiar with a lot of hip hop, and the way bass is handled across all these is fascinating, from the simple hit the one Bootsy Collins style to like someone's like, well, there's going to be a drone, or the greatest musical accomplishment I think ever, which is pointed out in I read somewhere Nile Rodgers was talking about this. When Doves Cry has no bass, just has the kick. And like when he pointed that out, it's one of those things where I start to listen to it over and over again and lose my mind. So again, thanks for Razi for letting me come in. I hope I passed the audition, and back to y'all.
Hey, Shizzle, thank you. All you had to do was say Bootsy Collins and you're in. Isn't that fascinating? When Doves Cry has no bass.
No bass.
That's amazing.
If I may, like Nile Rodgers is like, he said for and this is an extraordinary statement itself. He said, for a black man not to have bass in a song in the 80s was unheard of. But that's someone like, that's Prince right there. So it's crazy. And that's another, earlier you were talking about what music is, and I titled an album of mine ages ago, Music is a Problem to be Solved, because I think in some capacity, there's a lot of computation and equations going on, not even if you're just thinking about, I don't know, if you're doing really complex guitar figures or something, but or where the math is going to land or where the beat's going to land in terms of where the math is. But even more, it's like, what does the song want, or what is the artist really trying to say? Something I'm dealing with right now, because because I've been talking with some folks who are more in like the experimental music realm, is like, hey, what is a song? What's supposed to happen when I'm sitting down here with my gear, which is all still in storage because I'm rebuilding the studio, but like, what's exactly supposed to happen? And that's the type of thing where it's so freeing and yet so broad and open a concept. It kind of leaves me sometimes running screaming into the night, and hunting down like the basic simple thing that I want, going back to what's known and familiar, because I don't know what's supposed to happen. I hope that all made sense.
Yeah. Hey, look, thank you. Razi, I see your hand. Give me a minute. I think the ability of going into a song having no idea what is about to happen is the greatest thing. And if you ever lose that, you've got a problem. And I think part of the thing that we all reach for is to figure out how the rest of us have no idea. It's interesting that you say music is a solution or something. My thoughts on that. Say it again.
Music is a problem to be solved. I'll put it in the chat. Yeah.
I love that. I would go one step further and say music is a solution to be problematized. Or perhaps to be unsolved so it can be solved again, or something. Look, I don't know, I'm wanking right now. Maybe what I'm talking about is the creative process. It's I do want to get back to bass in a minute or maybe an hour or two, but that's really, really, really curious, because it's like I find that, we were talking briefly last week about, the week before that, about how there is a difference between a blank piece of paper and a blank screen. I believe a blank piece of paper has infinite possibility. I believe a blank screen has none. It is an absolute fucking void. That's just me though, and we could argue it, but I just don't give a shit. And that's because paper smells. It's got that smell to it, and ink or a pencil, it's got that smell. It's like, fuck, let's do this. But it's, yeah, man, that's hold on. I'm still digesting that When Doves Cry doesn't have a bass, because I've never really thought about that before. We'll come back to that. Hold on, Rezi, I want to throw it to you, and I want to get your regurgitation on this. Go.
Like, my thoughts are ahead of my ability to actually express musical concepts, but there's two things about bass that I wanted to launch off of right after you said it. And then of course I got lost in everything Charles was saying. The amount of energy in the low end is so much greater than the amount of energy in the top. Like, you need more watts, you need larger speakers, you need bigger strings. The waveforms are larger and longer. It does more physical stuff in the space. And in that, so there's two things. There's one documentary on bass players that I saw maybe 20 years ago that they were all like just weirdos, of course, because they're bassists. And they had these like real metaphysical and imaginative things to say about how the bass works. But that it really,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you saying as if the bass players have a higher concept idea that drives their art, Rezi?
I am absolutely. That is the subtext.
Thank you very much. Please keep going.
Every single one of them did. And like, you see a bassist up there and there's often a pretty static kind of discipline going on with their stuff sometimes. But the energy that goes into that note on the bottom of the chord and inverts it or changes it, or the passing tone, the way that you can manipulate the rest of the composition as the bassist with one note, you can do it with melody, and that's where a lot of the emotion is. But there's something visceral about moving holding a pedal tone underneath a bunch of moving chords in a melody and then changing that note and then coming back to it. And it's pretty profound. And all of these bass heavy words that go to describe it, like profound, like I don't know. That's kind of the limit of how I can even express that without thinking about it for a couple of weeks and getting some refreshers. But energy and responsibility and direction caused by that low end is remarkable. And there's a whole other thing, Carl, that you started to talk about with the displacement and the moving of the notes, like where they fall on the beat and how long those bass notes are, and the articulations that you can do in the low register that becomes rhythmic, that moves the pulse of the song in a way that, smaller, higher things can't. And I don't want to spend the next 45 minutes looking at my other window here trying to find it, but there is a video that takes apart John Taylor's bass playing through a couple of Duran Duran songs, and it's a very talented bassist doing it. Don't remember his name, don't remember where I saw it, but he shows, here it is if we're just doing the root note on the one. Here it is if we displace it by a quarter note. Here it is if we add some grace notes and silent notes to it. Here it is if we go root fifth. Here it is if we go root 3 octave. And he brings it back up to what John Taylor did in, let's say, Hungry Like the Wolf or Rio or something.
Oh my God.
And it's all these just solid displacements of the one and the off the beat and the pickup notes. And it is, I'm going to have to find it within a couple of weeks now because this is an important video to go back to. But the lesson on how much energy there is and how much you can do by moving the bass note, it's a tone we're talking about. We're talking about something melodic, more harmonic, in that way. Not just the kick, not just the impacts. But, yes, thank you for just giving me something to spout off on and think about, at least, if not, somebody jump in. That's all.
Thank you. I'll say, firstly, John Taylor, holy shit. Man, we were spoiled in the 80s having Duran Duran. People piss on Duran Duran all the time. John Taylor is one of the best bass players. The syncopation, that guy, his note choice, the way he could play, and what the bass brought to Duran Duran and the 80s. Who was the bass player in Nick Kershaw? He was fucking amazing. But who was the guy who played in Kachagoogoo? Holy shit, that guy! And also fucking...
He still plays, he's got videos and stuff current.
Is it Heaven 17 or something? The song that the band that did Living in the Family. Let me forget It's All in the Family. I'll remember their name. Haircut 100. It was one of those awful kind of like white boy northern funk bands of the 80s, but oh my God. Hey, wow, they're all English. Anyway, but John Taylor, listen to Duran Duran for the goddamn bass. Holy shit. And although Nick Rogue said he didn't know anything about music, what he's doing on the synths over the top, the chordal shapes, brilliant. I'm going to reveal in a minute the artist that inspired this. I'm a little bit nervous about it, and I'm going to come out of my shell to get my thing. But Rob, firstly, I want to hear your thing, and I'm looking forward to meeting you on Monday. Rob, go.
Yeah, I think I understand where you.
Rob, I think we lost you. It's a pity we've just lost Rob. But when I look at Rob, I just go, that guy's listening to AC/DC right now. Rob, the minute you come back in, I'm gonna throw it back to you, and I'm gonna throw this to Mr. Charles. Welcome again, Charles. I muted you, Charles. Sorry.
I hate Zoom so much I rarely use it, so I'm out of practice. Anyway, I don't know about you guys. I smoke marijuana once in a while. And something I will do often is just listen to music, because I didn't smoke weed for the first 40 years of my life. And stoned out of my gourd. I'm listening to John Taylor, and my wife comes in. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "He's he's he's doing it all." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "He's doing everything." And later, when I was sober, I was composing it, and I realized like he is by far the best musician out of that band, and they're all pretty good, but John Taylor is the best one. And if you listen to like anything on Rio, I mean, even just hearing it in my head as we're talking, like his bass playing, like I sort of my rough theory of what little music theory I know is I believe bass sort of provides a link between the rhythm, the drums, and the melody, and blah blah blah. That's not terribly new of a concept, but his playing, he ties everything together, and he's doing so much of the heavy lifting that because I really think he's bringing together four other decent players. I think Nick Rhodes is a better keyboard player than we probably gave him credit for, but that whole band was amazing. And what they were doing was copying Chic. And again, going back to Nile Rodgers. But he was incredible. And I just saw a video of them playing recently, I think at like Austin City Limits. And it was astounding because those guys are all, not young, a little older than us. And they just shredded. They just beat the shit out of anybody else. And yeah, you're right. They got so many bands of the 80s, but especially them, they got passed off as being just ridiculous, and when in fact they were some of the strongest musicians. Oh, and Razi, you put in Mick Karn. Mick Karn is hands down my favorite bass player. There's a song called Glow World by Bill Nelson, who is one of my favorite guitarists. And Mick Karn, like people are like, what's his greatest? I think that's his greatest playing in some ways, because in that song, what he's doing is he's both, he's laying down his part, but then he's literally playing, like having fun over it. And he's just showing, again, it's like mind-boggling. He's just showing that he, okay, I can do the rote thing, but then I'm going to go somewhere else and I'm going to open up this world. Yeah, Mick Karn was amazing. And yeah, the guy from Kajagoogoo, I mean, he was one of the first people outside of King Crimson that I saw using a stick, and he's still. And you said Heaven 17, what's his name? Martin Ware has a podcast.
Yeah.
And he interviews him, and it's really fascinating.
There's also the guy Peter Gabriel uses.
Oh, Tony Levin.
Yeah. Now go ahead.
Incredible. He's just like everything, he plays the like sticks on his bass. He he slaps, and yeah, he's all over the place with so many great people and playing so many different things. I remember years ago, Peter Gabriel released the stems for like a remix project for like Games Without Frontiers and a few other things, and like that had his bass playing, and it was just like, again, it's not anything that's like monumental like King Crimson level necessarily, but it's there and it's solid and it's perfect. Like what's his name? The guy. This is the last thing I'll say. I swear, because I'm almost out of coffee. The guy. Leland Sklar. Who's a big session player in LA. He, among other things, he played bass on Sussudio by Phil Collins, but a ton of other stuff. And he talks about like his bass parts, and he breaks them all down. They're amazing. And just doing, again, very little, we're doing what's required and not overplaying. Which I would be guilty of. And truth be told, I haven't played my bass in so long, my calluses are like, I got like baby's hands again, so.
Thank you. This is a really interesting thing about, and I'm going to tie it into the point I was trying to make before, like another artist who is driven by something higher, much higher, is Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. That when you hear his music, what he's playing is a representation of something galactically grand that is being put in front of you in the form of music. And they're actually, incidentally, they're playing Las Vegas tonight, and I got a friend going over, who was trying to score mushrooms. Anyway, so here's Frank. Now, and this is really interesting that the artist that inspired this rant was actually Enya. And I'm like, Enya doesn't slap that mean bass baby. But the thing I absolutely love about Enya is the use of emotion over chords that are usually kind of standard. And although some of it she does go into, I call it the Elvish chords, which is like, it might be C, C, C major to A flat, A flat, A flat major. It's that real Lord of the Rings Elvish sound. She pulls into that sometimes. But something that she does is that the bass sits on thirds and fifths. Sometimes she'll even sit it on a 7. And the colors that it is drawing are absolutely beautiful. And once again, it's something to put in the toolkit. If Enya was going to do a bass line for this, what would she do? If bloody John Taylor was going to do, what would he do? And that's the other thing as well, is that, you know, when you've got a bass player in the band and they're worth their salt, they play the bass. And they're going to bring something to the song, which isn't just boom, 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 boom. It's kind of, I mean, like, actually, that was kind of a slightly inventive, but they bring the dimension. And, you know, to find a bass player who's really amazing, they understand subs. They understand that if I'm playing actually a lot of this bass line an octave higher, and then I drop it an octave, you're going to feel that. It's stuff like that, people who understand the harmonics, they understand the mechanics, they understand the physics, and they understand the emotion. That's fucking bass. And, you know, isn't it crazy that one of the most beautiful bass songs is When Doves Cry? Like, now we're getting into Japanese stuff. Ivan, why are you so fucking quiet, man? We're standing. We're right close to getting into spiritual shit, and you're not fucking jumping. No, don't unmute.
I'm not moving that fast
too
today.
late. What? Why don't I say again? What'd you say?
I am not moving that fast today.
Drink more coffee, man. We need you. Rezi, talk to me.
I don't want to answer yet, but I want to hear, if it's cool, people's technique specific to thinking about bass. Like, how do you program it? How do you play it? When do you write it in the song? Just like, because I know we all have touched the bass and we've all written and recorded pieces with it. And I've seen 3 people not chime in about how excited they are about
and
bass
Brent,
yet, and I'm really curious.
Can I see your hand, Charles. I actually want to throw this to Brett, because Brett's bases are pretty fucking malicious. So Brett, if can I volunteer you to talk about this?
So my approach is a little different. When I'm actually playing bass, it's often very supportive to what's actually going on the track. A lot of my bass comes from noise, like heavily distorted objects. Yeah, and I like to do things with pitch bending, and then my voice itself is pretty bassy, and so I end up playing that a lot more than I do instruments. One of the conversations Jacob and I was kind of having here is a side chain, is literally how he approaches it from the standpoint of bass is like his.
Oh yeah, so the way that I use bass, and we're talking more of like the tone, not necessarily the instrument. I usually use it as like a SWAT team to kick in a door of a song and then flashbang the entire song. Just really flip it on its head, you know.
My kind of thinking in that regard is like, you know, it's a good way to let the listener know that this insidious monster's coming, or it's right outside the door.
And it wants it.
Yep. That's kind of my approach on it.
That's lovely. A SWAT team approach. I like that a lot. And the insidious monster. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Yeah, that was totally different to everything we've been talking about, but that was fantastic. You just added it. No, you added a new dimension. I love that. I really appreciate that. Ivan, what you got?
Bass. So usually, the bass line gets written early on in the song for me. Like if it's not the thing that comes before percussion, it's the thing that's happening right alongside of it. So I'm jumping between parts and programming both the percussion and the bass line at the same time, so I can get them to agree with each other. And then like instrumentation these days, like, and if the bass line's not coming from the emulator too, I know nobody's gonna want to listen to it.
That slap bass was that a comment about the slap bass?
No, the MU2, like it's
Which
somehow
sound?
you make a bass sound with that, and it sounds good by default.
Can you? What format does it save emulator to as?
I'm using the VST, so I have no idea.
All right, because I think you need to start sharing some of these emulators. And I have a disc somewhere that's it's the Gabriel Fairlight disc somewhere. I don't know where the fuck it is, but it's got these great. I have Gabriel 2 on the turntable right now, and I'm just listening to the Fairlight. I have no idea what I'm doing with this stuff, but it's kind of cool, which is that's a huge subject. I'm gonna thank you, and I'm throwing this to Mr. Alex.
So the topic is bass, right?
Yes.
How do you say? What I've learned along the way is bass lines don't have to be that low. And the second thing is keep it simple, but keep it tight.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of very Gandalf advice. Keep it simple, keep it hidden, keep it tight. No, but that's really tight. Talking about tight now, look, that's getting into a new big conversation I want to have. I'm going to throw this over to Razi, who's about to take over, because I've got to deal with Frank.
I still am formulating some new things to add, and I see two people who haven't weighed in on bass yet. Alex, your hand was up first, and Adam is champing at the bit for something that's going to take us places. So, Alex, can you jump in and bring us down to the fundamentals?
Yeah, maybe just to go further on my previous point. When it was my first band, I was the bassist because I was the worst guitarist, and we need a bassist, the worst guitar player. And what I wanted to do back then is just play as many notes as possible. But with time, I've learned that that's the exact wrong way to do bass, because you should really focus on what you do and make it count every note. So the small variation in timing is really important. The small variation in articulation is really important. So that's what I mean with keep it simple, but keep it tight. Keep it very fundamental, but really play with those nuances.
Yes, all of that and so much. I think that more than other instruments, the way that you stop a bass note changes things. The way that you come off the string and mute it, the way that you release the key, the time that it takes, you can fuck stuff up rhythmically just by the duration of those things in ways that you can't with other instruments. They all have their influence, no matter what register you're playing in. But down at the bottom, it starts contributing to the rhythm track in ways that other layers don't. Alex, did you want to jump back in on that and finish it up?
No, I just forgot to put my hand.
Well, that's fine too. Adam, let's hear it. Unleash. Make it happen.
No,
Give us the down low.
Okay, trying to get this damn thing unmuted, but so I'm so sorry I didn't catch our new friend's name there. It says Chang CRT Music.
Yep. Yeah, you can call me Chang or Charlie.
Chang or Charlie. Okay, Charlie Chang. Hey, how about that? All right. So I was thinking about like what you were saying before about drum and bass and hip hop and all that kind of stuff. I too am one of those that crosses a lot of genres. And so I do have a lot of theories about bass because I find that it's kind of different with every piece, but fundamentally, and what Alex was just saying too is like, it doesn't have to be that low. So basically, my take on it is that if the drums are low, like if you've got a lot in the sub on the drums, then you don't want a lot of sub in your bass instrument. And if you want a lot of sub in the bass instrument, then you're going to need to take it out from the drums. And of course, we were talking about when doves cry, the appearance of bass in that is pretty much handled by percussion. So it's all like, there's a lot of tuned drums in that track. Even the kick is tuned, which it should be. That's another thing. Tune your kicks, tune your kicks, tune your drums. So Aaron mentioned over in our chat here on Zoom that about the dynamic range in Fat of the Land. And so, the crazy thing about Fat of the Land, right, is that when you listen to it, what it's really got is it's got a lot of great separations and a lot of layers. So you'll have these layers where the drum is cutting it'll be side chain, but not dramatically side chain. So it's not going like boo wah, boo wah, boo wah, which is another way that you can do very cool bass lines. But it'll duck it just a tiny bit, so you get the hit from the kick, but you're still getting all the boom from the bass, right? Other things that I like to do is I like to work with layers that aren't just the bass instrument layer, that bring out the melody in the bass line. So, and same thing with drums. Like I very strongly believe that there should be a sound in the kick that goes up higher, and it doesn't have to be the kick. It can be any old thing. But same thing with the bass line. If you've got a bass line going, it doesn't hurt to give it some emphasis in a higher range, with something that you are there and sort of compressing into the bass sound. I do it a lot, and that's very much the Prodigy, the early stuff. There was a lot of that was sampled and drum machine, like 808, right?
Yeah.
And,
Adam, you're touching on like one of the perennial questions of rock production is like how to tuck the bass guitar and kick drum in together, at least since we had the all loud
rock?
all the time.
That's a whole different thing.
Rock. It's all rock. The show's called Art of Rock. You've got to give it some space to be. I mean, we're not talking about classical so much. There's a drum kit. There's a chord progression. Sometimes there's noises. I just wanted to put a pin in that while some other people jump in. Deciding on your frequencies and how they arrange each other with ducking or frequency selection. Aaron, can you jump in a little bit on it too?
While I do not play bass, I do appreciate bass. And the song that I posted in the chat is called Narayan. And there's no other way to describe it except to use the bass like as a weapon. It climatizes as it goes, it punches, it gets heavier and heavier. And as if it's not a complete banger in and of itself, eventually they contribute lyrics to it. So you're like, there's a whole another fucking thing. They've been crushing it for minutes on end. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, here's your bonus. There's some lyrics in there. So it totally flips a lot of song structure on its head. I have owned and or bought and or gifted this album like 10 times over. And I found myself much like Boromir. It's like I literally picked it up at a used record store and I was like, one does not simply put down a masterpiece. Like, I was like, it's so basically, in short, if you haven't visited in a long time or if you've never heard it, the Fat of the Land will give you a lot of ideas of how to play with your music structure and definitely on bass, because holy shit.
Talking about arrangement, talking about where the instruments fall. And I've gotten some lessons about like, yeah, just don't put the bass tone and the kick drum on the same beats. Build something that way. There's some really easy ways into it. Chad, Chang, I saw your hand go up. Did you want to jump in on anything else with that? You,
yes. Yeah, but
right?
I'll try to keep it brief. My usual tendency is tangential shit out the fucking yin yang. But you know,
I hear.
it's I will say so right off the bat, my favorite bass players are Mick Karn, John Taylor, John Entwistle, Tony Levin, and Pino Palladino, who plays now for the Who, but started off back in the day in England doing session work for Gary Newman and Paul Young. Phenomenal fretless player. And when Gary Newman went through a jazz funk stage, Pino was there pushing the whole thing. In fact, and he also used the sequential circuits drum machine, which is what Prince used on a couple of, I think on Kiss, definitely, which is that giant kick where if you try this sometime, play either Kiss or When Doves Cry and light a match and put it in front of your monitors, not too close, and just watch what the kick does, because it'll blow it out the water. But so with bass lines, coming from I started off more as sort of a indie rock, goth punk industrial player, but I respect these musicians who I can't even begin to touch in terms of technique. But when I play, I think about what they, imagine what they might do. And I always think of a couple quotes. One is, there's a great story about I think it's Luther Perkins, who was Johnny Cash's guitarist back in the day, and Luther, someone said to him, Luther, how come you play the same thing all over again, every song, just do, that type of thing. And he said, well, y'all are running around looking for it, and I done found it and stuck it. And it's like, it's like that meme of the kids exploding. It's crazy, and he's so right. And for me in that job, I think also too of because I don't know much theory, and I just I go by listening and what sounds right. I think of what Paul Schaefer said, what Miles Davis told him before they filmed the scene in Scrooged, where they're playing outside of the office. He's like, Miles, what should I do? What should I do? And Miles is like, motherfucker, don't play the rope. And again, it's like, what? And it's like, of course you don't play the root, but then it's like, okay, if you don't play the root, what do you do? Do you 3/5, 7/, intervals around it. And I'm also, I think of that, but also what we touched on briefly in technique. That's something I'm learning too, because I did not know the finer arts of recording, even though I've been in some very nice studios with some great people. And I'm like, oh, I really should think about frequencies and stuff. And but it's amazing, what you said, Adam, is when you can find that space and you move everything around.
Yeah.
And when you get everything in that one spot, I was playing a song for a friend of mine named Nathan Moody, who's an incredible mastering engineer and sound designer. And I was playing a song for him. And I said, I'm really proud of how you can the kick, there's not too much compression, but the kick and the bass are coming in. And he's like, okay, what if you do this? And he just, reached in the dot and turned a knob. And all of a sudden it's like, everything was in focus. The bass was strong, not overpowering. The kick was strong, and it was just beautiful. And yeah, it's like finding that space is it's finding God in the music. And alternately too, when you don't play the bass, like Adam said again, When Doves Cry, it's all in the percussion and it's all in that fat kick. And sometimes, a bass player, maybe your job is to just play, on the hole, on the quarter, every,
get out of the way and draw the attention back to the one. I want to throw back to Adam, because I know that those are some thoughts that you were building on, and your hands back up. So let's if Carl's hand is now down.
Yeah, my hand was goddamn up.
gonna say, I've
All
got
right,
you.
my fucking shut the fuck up. Here we go.
I just wanted to wedge Adam back into it because I want to hear what he has to say about the specific thing there. So go ahead. Yes,
No,
I'm
you
done.
won't be quick. You're gonna wait, Adam. Now, firstly, try this trick. Put an attack on your base, and it's a velocity attack. So it's gonna slowly, if you hit it lighter or whatever, the attack is gonna be slower. Not too slow, just ever so slightly slow. And you're actually, believe it or not, every time the bass plays with the kick drum, you're gonna have that slight velocity thing in there. Yeah, you're sort of ducking. My percolator's about to go off, so I'm gonna run away. So the objective of the exercise is when the bass hits, when the kick hits, the bass is slowly coming in up behind it, and you do that with your velocity. You could put that on. Don't put it on the filter. Put it on the amp, because the objective is to get those bass notes out of the way. And if you're putting it on the filter, then it's sort of defeating the purpose, because the bass, the low sounds are still there. So hopefully you're understanding. Yes, you can already do this with side chaining, but you're going to start adding a feel to the bass. This kind of cool kind of wah thing is going to be going on. Another thing you could be trying to do is a similar thing, but you put it on a high pass. So it's a high pass duck, so that whenever you're hitting together, there's the high pass version of that, which might be velocity controlled. Alex, this is an idea for you as well, is sucking some of that, the bass of the bass instrument out so the kick can poke through. If you want to do some fun things, put resonance on it. People do not use high pass filters a lot. And if you want the most devastating bass sound in the history of humankind, you use a high pass filter, because the high pass filter has a resonant on the bass. The resonant with a low pass filter is up there, whereas with a high pass, it's down there. And it's just a great sound that no one ever uses. And you can still be putting a high pass filter on something in 80 or 120 cycles, and you're still going to get bass going on. So when the kick and the bass go, adjust that high pass. You could put it on a velocity, for example. Another idea I had is that when the bass in the verse, like it might be one of those songs where it's a sort of similar chord structure thing going on. In the verses, the bass is playing on the third and on the fifth. And that's going to be adding to the question, because the verses ask the question, the chorus gives you the answer. Rudimentary idea of rock and roll, take it or leave it. Maybe in the verses, the monster is threatening at the door, and in the chorus, it comes out from under your bed, or it SWAT teams through the room, whatever it is. But the thing about it is that in the chorus, the bass goes to the root note, and that is the root note is the resolution. The root note is where you go home. The root note answers the question. And what so much music does is that there's no tension there, because the root note is always going, instant resolution, instant answering the question. It's not answering a dimension to the, it's not answering questions here. That's what we need. We need questions and things that are getting answered. And another really fun thing to do is you might, the chord might be, for example, G. And going into what you might do is in the last 4 bars of your verse, you sit on an A flat. So you're sitting one semitone above it to create tension. Then you drop to the G. One semitone to give resolution. I hope that makes sense. Adam and Rezi, thank you so much. I was dealing with Frank issues. Adam, I want to hear your amazing brain. Go.
Oh, Frank. So what you're talking about is there's a lot of great techniques there for that kind of thing, like using the high pass filter to sort of tune the bass. I do that with a parametric EQ, and it works quite similarly to using the peak filter on a high pass or sweep filter. Okay, so many thoughts in my head now. The other thing, I popped it into our Zoom chat over here, but pockets, right? Like a lot of what he's talking about there is pockets, giving each piece its own space to breathe, giving each instrument its own space to breathe, and I was trying to remember who said it. It might be another Bootsy Collins thing, but it was basically an idea in funk that when the guitars are busy, when the other instruments are busy, the bass line should not be busy, and when the other instruments are not busy, that's when the bass line should be busy. So that's just sort of your basic idea of pockets, and what Carl's talking about the interplay, that questioning and answering, that I think is really the better use of pockets, is to get that call and response sort of feeling within the thing, and the building to tension and the resolution, the feeling.
Yeah, that was where my mind was going with what you're saying. Like, there's levels to it. There's within the beat, there's within the bar, there's within the phrase, there's within there all these sort of micro to macroscopic parts of pushing and pulling the feel and telling the story and posing the questions and delivering the answers that you've got a lot of space to do that in the low end.
Yeah, well, earlier mentioned Bootsy Collins, and his thing was that funk lives in the one, and so he would play, but there'd be 4 bars between that one. You know what I'm saying? He's talking about the one before the whole sequence. So he'll be like boom, and that's your root note, and then be like bump it up,
Yes,
bump.
I'm not going to say that the James Brown Bootsy quote is misleading, but it does require the funk to also be everywhere else in the bar for the one to be even meaningful. Because if you took out everything else and just came back with the root on one or something every bar, that would not be funky. It'd be a little funky, but
no, not necessarily funky, but I guess it depends on what else is happening around it.
It requires a lot of things to be happening. Yes, I think that is an important, just to acknowledge.
And that again is the pocket. So when the bass is busy, the other instruments are not. When the other instruments are busy, the bass is not. Because I can't even tell you how many times I have just used a single bass tone to cover 4 bars of something underneath something because of everything else that was going on. One of those things, though, and I wanted to get back to this with Aaron's talk about Prodigy there, right? And the layering and things. I was thinking about that, and okay, so there's a few things going on there. One, obviously, is the great compression and limiting that's going on there. So everything is we've talked about the technique New York compression before, where it's all copied to a second thing, compress the fuck out of it and mix those signals back together, kind of thing. So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on, a lot of hard limiting to get it, so it's there's intentional distortion in the bass. The other thing, check it out, man. Bootsy action figure. The other thing that they do is if you listen, my favorite example is probably Diesel Power, because there's more things going on in the bass there, because it's got the one part that's like the blah 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 kind of thing, and that's kind of the burbly part, and it's more under the reverb kind of thing, and it has this sort of more underwatery filter to it, where it's taking off more of the top and more of the bottom, so it's almost 45 filtered or something. And then when the bass actually hits, the thing that really makes you go whoa isn't the boom, because the boom is there. The thing that makes you go whoa is the burn that's on top of it.
I think Hans Zimmer taught us that through cinema composition, that is actually what that sound is called. You pronounced it correctly. Adam, hold up for a second. I want to hear more of what you're talking about. Carl, give me a thumbs up if you want to jump back in, because I know your hand is officially up, but also Aaron has something to add.
Hold on. Thank you so much. I'll just jump in quickly. I wasn't actually talking about pockets, and I wasn't talking about call and response. However, that is such a relevant thing, because the concept of calling and responding is that is Adam. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's huge. I was talking about when I'm saying question is answering, I'm saying the entire verse wants to ask a question. It's one of the ideas, is that if you're thank you, I see your thing, that if you can set it up in such a way where the verse feels like it's answering a question, and the chorus feels like it's giving the answer. And you can really fuck with this because then in the last verses, you can be asking a different question and the chorus gives the same answer, but because it can add a really evil twist to the song, to the lyrics, to the music if you start doing that. And also with the what I'm talking about is in the actual chain, when I was talking about having the velocity going to the high pass filter, I'm talking about an actual filter, if you can, in your synthesizer, if you have room for two filters, that there's a low pass filter that's making a bass sound like a bass, and isn't it fantastic? But next in the chain is a high pass, and that high pass is velocity respondent or controller respondent or whatever, such that per note, per moment, per instant, it's sucking bass out. And if you can't do that, then put the have a sub in your bass, have a sub oscillator or something, and that is controlled by your velocity. So you can have less bass in that by simply striking the key lighter, so that whenever the bass and the kick drum are playing at the same time, all you're doing is you're saying through velocity or controllers or whatever, have less sub in there. So you still hear the bass, but it's being sucked out at that moment when the kick drum hits. I personally like the I'm getting high pass filters with resonance are a thing that I'm doing right now because they sound so good, and I think I have the best one ever. But you know, the KT, and there's some software thingies around that sound absolutely beautiful, and you can do it. You know, you can do it with a plugin or whatever. I'm going to shut up now, Aaron. And thank you again, Rezi, for holding the fort. I had brain issues. Aaron, talk to me.
I was going to say too, yeah, it's kind of like with everything that everybody's talking about. You know, you can get to a point where I think Adam hit a point where you know, it's like sometimes you do need to experiment around with like the pockets and all of these things that you can build in a structure, and that eventually could be when you're beating your head against the wall, being like, why doesn't the track work? You can inject all these pockets and be like, well, there it is. It was there the whole fucking time. You know, it's the different accents, it's the different points that you're structuring and hitting the bass. And then you could appreciate that. I mean, even from like a live perspective, because I saw in this moment, and not only did they have a killer fucking metal show, but they just had a point where it was just for the boys. You know, as great as they are as a unit, they were just like, let's just unleash fucking hell, and they're just going to go to war. And they just had their guitarist and their drummer just fucking killing it for several minutes, but the pockets and the dynamics changed. So it was always engaging. It was just like, okay, cool, man. I'm glad we've got this point. Like, it's great to hear these hits and it's great to hear all these staple songs, but just to hear what these dudes can do, like mechanically, rhythmically, and chain all these things together, like, holy shit, man. No. But I guess if I were to put a finer point on it, it's just fuck around with the pockets and the structures and the fills and all of that, and you have all of that cash for when things aren't working. You know, you can plug and play.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm loving that. I love the way you bring a metal perspective to this. I really appreciate that. I'm going to throw this to the resonator.
Carl, you're talking about, I think if I'm following, and Chank's prompt to ask your actual signal chain in this would be super interesting to me too. High pass and low pass at the same time with resonant peaks. And the thing that's drawn to mind, doing that, moving those poles to narrow the sound and putting it on the one, we're suddenly in the warm leatherette territory. And I just, you know, I refreshed my memory on it and I'm looking up just to make sure it's the Korg 700 or 700S. And I think that's what's going on in that song. And it's an amazing example of the simplicity of the bass, which kind of isn't really a bass. It's in the upper register, but it lands on the one and there's some funk going on between it. And oh my God, I mean, that's just like one of the seminal classics for which, if it wasn't recorded, I mean, well, first of all, Daniel Miller being a visionary and everything, we might not be talking about this stuff today. Just a point. That is it.
Thank you. What I'll do is, so the trick is, Adam, I see your hand, I'll be quick. The trick with doing this, is that you don't take a lot of subs out. And, you know, I'm one of those guys, I'm a 40 hertz kind of guy, because that's where my bass goes down to. And that's a real fucker about if you're in C, then C's going down to 37. And that's getting ridiculous. So, and there's tricks actually, to fake subs. Actually, I'll remind me, because I'll tell you a really fun trick. So, all you're doing is you're taking an octave out. So it's, you know, and if you're at 40, then that's 80. You don't need to take that. It's just making a tiny bit of breath space. But you do have to be careful of the resonance, because when you add resonance to a high pass at that depth, you're going to start fucking shit up. You can do this as an effect. It sounds great. And if it's a big, shiny, kind of sound, a high pass biting into it sounds absolutely divine. A fun effect is that you have a supreme sub oscillator, like that is 40 cycles or lower. But you're not, the audio of it doesn't go into the audio chain. The audio of it goes into the filter. So the filter, and if you use like a ramp or something, a ramp wave, a sawtooth, you're using that to open and close the sawtooth at that low level. So technically it's not an oscillator, it just sounds like it, because the filter is going blah, 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 it's farting. And when you're doing that sort of thing and you control it with you're using a controller to pull it in, you get a really fantastic sound happening. And also the thing to remember, that when you put resonance on a low pass filter, you actually suck, you're sucking bass out. And when you listen to it, you'll hear that the sound draws back so it can pull that resonance forward, which is why I don't use a lot of resonance on basses, which is stupid. Although I have recently discovered a filter, which is the most beautiful two filters I've ever heard, that are, even on my fucking Moog, I don't really use much resonance. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful resonance, but I just don't use it much. I've got ARP 2500 stuff. Legit, they're not the B word, they're real. And the filters are the filters are incredible, and the resonance is creamy. It's the only word I can use to describe it. It's just the creamiest resonance you've ever heard. And when it's low, and I know that you can get plugins that'll do this really super cheap, super easy, super free, in fact. They just add a beautiful, beautiful dimensions to the thing. I'm going to shut up now. Adam!
Hello, it's me. Okay, I have so many thoughts that are cramming up now, because this is such a great conversation. Y'all are just so good at this. All right, so Carl, you said something, you know, about your 40 hertz basses there. And we have discussed this before, but Max Bass, I actually remembered the name of it this time, Razi. Thank you. Fantastic little plug-in from Waves there. That's I think it's about $30 standalone, but you can always find those things on sale. And it generates the frequency, the resonant frequencies of something lower, but you don't actually have that low note in there. So it's great, you know, for the sort of modern production where a lot of stuff people are listening to it in earbuds or like on the laptop or just on the phone speaker or something. So like, you know, and that's kind of another thing, you know, I was saying earlier about layering sort of the top end of your bass. You need to have something these days where you can actually hear the bass in your phone, right? Or else a lot of your music's just going to be lost to the listener. And what does that mean? That means they're going to listen to it less. So having the bass be able to get up into those ranges, of course, max bass is one of those things that by by generating those overtones, that's the word I was looking for. It's an illusion that makes the brain think that there's lower frequencies there than there actually are. And so it doesn't take the amount of, because like to get those low frequencies, you need so much energy, right? But if those frequencies aren't there and just the overtones are, it takes a lot less energy to get there. So I think it's a pretty economical and kind of requires less of the compression and maximizing kind of tricks to do that. So that's the max bass, getting the deep sort of thing. Just get in there and monkey with it, and when it sounds good, you're good. Metal. All right. So earlier, Razi was saying, rock and roll production, and I was kind of like, well, which rock and roll, right? Like Mutt Lange rock and roll, or like nowadays, so nowadays, the metal bands, they all use electronic production now. They use the same tricks that we use in dance music or dubstep or drum and bass or any of that shit. Like they're using electronic kicks that are layered into the kicks that the drummers play, or they're using triggers to do the electronic triggers. They're all using electronics like sweeps and white noise sort of things, like kind of stuff, risers, bass drops, right? Somebody was talking about the electronic sort of stuff up in the Zoom chat here. Like that's a big part of it, right? The slides, right? And a lot of the metal bands now, they use the risers, they use the drops, the whole 9 yards, which are tricks that come from way on back. You can go back and listen to the stuff, like you listen to the swing music and stuff, and you hear the same tricks, and it's pretty awesome. And again, too, that's another thing with a lot of layers, right? That's a kind of music with a lot of layers. Let me see. There was the other thing, was the warm leatherette. That is one of those bass lines that has a great buzz. Like that first note, that buzz, buzz, right? It's beautiful. I kind of always figured that they did that with a pedal or something. I mean, it could be something that they knobbed into on the thing, but I know a lot of the 80s synth players, I mean, my friends used to do this, would plug just the regular guitar pedals into the thing. You convert the line level kind of thing with the gain, and but they would plug in like the Boss distortion pedal or something like that, and crank out a bass line on the synth, an electronic bass line. Today there are a lot of pedals that are made specifically for bass guitars, and there are a lot of pedals that are made specifically for line level instruments as well. One of the really popular ones was the Big Muff, which and there's another one, I think it was called the Wicker. Is it the Wicker, or is that just one of the settings on the Big Muff? But it's pretty cool because it gives it like a kind of thing going. It's pretty neat. But yeah, so that was my input on that part. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Oh boy, now we're getting into distortion. Alex, thank you. Let's go.
So one of the problems with resonance on basses is that resonance in some filter designs has the unfortunate consequence of sucking out the bass. That's especially prominent on Moog style filters. There are some ways to compensate for that, but but it usually does that. So that's something to be aware of. So maybe you have to be a bit more, how do I say, use it like a spice and not like crank the resonance, even though it sounds nice. And the second thing, if you're not doing what Carl said, like a slow attack, the other thing people usually do is to add metallic or like a transient at the start of the bass tone to simulate what an acoustic electric bass does. Because when you plug the string, there's usually a short transient, and you can either do that with like a filter sweep that's quick, or with like an FM synthesizer where the amount of modulation is really big for a short time in the beginning.
I know how to do this. Hi, welcome back. Yeah, okay, this is very interesting because yeah, and that's why I'm pushing high pass. Use a high pass filter, because that will, when you add resonance to a high pass, it will add resonance, because the resonance gets added where the slope is, and the slope's at the base, not at the top. But what you're saying, Alex, is really true. And it's interesting how the Moog style stuff, it does suck the bass out. Fascinating. Rezi, can you resonate me, baby?
Yeah. The I want to go back to the little fight between kick drum and like electric synth bass and electric bass guitar fight. And nobody fucking asked, but striking that balance sometimes comes up in mastering. You know, like you hear it and you're like, oh, there's no definition. What was I thinking? It's been 6 months since I mixed this. But yay, we have the tracks. We can just open the session and go back and then just shelve off everything under 100 from all the guitars and all the comping synth pads and all the vocal tracks. And you're like, okay, there was some garbage in there. We've cleaned up some space. Now we're just hearing the kick drum below 30 hertz, not the musical stuff, the air. We're just hearing the thump of the bass. Let's say it's an electric bass guitar in this case. Finger stuff and noises below 30, below the 40 hertz fundamental, and that's a mess. And you just be like, I don't need one of those. The arrangement's good, but the bass guitar's notes are now implying something that the kick drum air doesn't need, and I want to refocus. We shelve off everything under 40 with a pretty steep filter, because we're playing an E in this song apparently, and we've got the low E on the bass guitar, and all of a sudden everything cleans up, and the kick drum is moving the air when it's supposed to, and the bass guitar is feeling like it's moving the song when it's supposed to, and we bring it back to mastering, because it's me mastering again. And we don't have to do anything to it. It fixed itself, because, you know, fix it in the mix. That's a fun fight to have, and there's a billion other ways to solve it. That one just came to mind, and I like thinking about it, so I thought I'd talk about it. And the other thing, if anybody has the opposite case of the Prince song, where the song is just all bass and not Big Bottom by Spinal Tap, because I take that one, but a song that's like all bass all the time and just bass and bass sounds and bass guitars.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over. Here's Chris. Chris, hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me slowly. Hit me quick. Hit me.
Das ist gut, ich liebe dich. Oh wait, I said it wrong. Sorry, Alex. Can I just say, Mark, Razi? I'm sorry, I'm using your unofficial name. I hope that the NSA isn't.
We go very far back, and I barely flinch.
I am such a noob about learning, you know, the fine arts of frequencies and mastering and whatnot. You know, if I do master my own stuff, it's definitely from a plugin. What's been really fascinating for me. Oh, sorry. We were going to talk bass heavy songs. I have two. One of my favorite songs, and it's not like super bass heavy, but Green Machine by Caius. It's fucking dope. And it's got a bass solo. And what's funny is, when I said my favorite bassist earlier, I can't believe I left out Peter Hook. I only have an Eastwood reproduction of his 6-string bass. But anyway, that's on Green Machine's amazing, because it's a heavy song, because I think everybody's fucking tuned down to, like, you know, 19 Bs below you know, below human range. But that's an incredible one with just like good solid bass, and then like a great bass solo. And it's not even like, there's not even like a lot of high end, you know, it's just like a good solid bass song, but the guy's rocking out. As for all bass, there's this stuff coming out of Brazil that is the weirdest fucking hip hop variant I've ever heard, because it's like gangster rap, but it's sung in Portuguese, but the music is so it's just like I can't. It's so hard to describe. It's like incomplete and loud as fuck and noisy. So like they have a tremendous amount of bass. I wish I could remember even one artist, but it's sort of all the song is. And I sent a link to one song to my friend Nathan, and he's like, "What is this fucking noise?" And I'm like, "How dare you?" He's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "It's crazy." But I realized like what it was doing was like, and this is an experimental musician. He was just like, what are they doing? But if these guys, these kids basically, it's one of the things I love about hip hop is because how it started, way back in the day, I was listening in like sixth grade was just people saying, they wanted to make music, which is, I think, something we were talking about a little bit, Carl, in the beginning. I think it's analogous to what you were saying about, people just wanting to make music and connect and heal and make better. And that's what this stuff is doing, but it's horrendous music, but I love it at the same time because it's just so fucking wrong because it's all bass and all noise. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else besides Big Bottom that's as bass heavy as that. Green Machine is the one that comes up. And yes, I saw Adam. You put in Zoe Keating. Yeah, she's great. She's amazing. It's funny. Back to like the other, like some things about the bass. I Remain in Light, Cross-Eyed and Painless. I brought that up because I think that's a great example of a funk bass adapted for rock. But if you listen to it, it's two bass parts, which I didn't realize for a very, very long time. Because there's somebody slapping, and then there's, as Tina Weymouth is doing some part, but then there's someone doing like a more melodic part over it. And that's just really fascinating because, and on that album too, I think it was Bill Laswell played on that, and he got his start. I think he started doing, if someone can look this up, either prove me wrong or corroborate it. He started doing. He was a session guy, and I think he said something like he learned that a lot of the funk players were using like I don't know if it was harmonizers or something to get extremely low bass, which
Boss
is
octave pedal.
yeah.
Down.
And like they wouldn't and he'd go downtown to like, Brian Eno's studio, and they'd be like, "We're not getting the sound." And he's like, "Hang on a second." He would put that in and like, yeah, Regiment from that My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. Now that, that is a beautiful interplay of bass and drums. I sent Razi away. I'm sorry, come back. No, but it's just so amazing to hear that kind of thing come into music. I think it's that other, again, going way out. We were talking before about like other styles coming into, the one style you're doing. And I think I love that stuff about like New York hip hop drew on so many different things. Disco eventually drew on metal, and it's just wild where it all came out. But those are Laswell's playing is just astounding. I mean, talk about finding the pocket. Like when he's on, he's incredible about finding the space and like doing the exact right thing. He did a lot of albums for when I was a yogi, when I was really into yoga. He did a lot of albums for a yoga studio that are some beautiful, like semi-traditional Indian, like classical music, but then like some really weird excursions that were, him and his bass. So I yield the bass to the floor.
Thank you. That's really fascinating stuff. One thing I did want to add from before was if you're gonna have a sub bass, I'm kind of really old school where I'll go either a sine wave or a triangle. because anything else is going to start getting in there a bit much with too much harmonics and stuff. Or if you do have a sub bass, make sure it's, the envelope on it is such a way that it's pulling all those high harmonics out really quickly. Yeah, so I don't really know any Supreme, like, because I'm just Bernie Warwell all the way. And what he used to do with bass was just absolutely stunning. The way that Bernie and Bootsy would interplay. Yeah, tell me, you said you remembered a song of yours.
Not to talk about me, but it was a song I've lately been going back and digging up old songs of mine, like old files, live sets, because I primarily work in Ableton now. And just seeing, something that I didn't like before, seeing what it's like. And I had a song, it's not online anymore. I don't think I can link it, but like it was not working. And I had done my two biggest tricks which were pull everything out and, put it back in step by step to see what's fucking up the signal. Or the other one was the opposite, was basically make, I hope this isn't too old in reference, a Dagwood sandwich out of a bitch. And like, I'm going to put everything on. Oh, how many compressors on a track? Je ne sais pas. Magnifique. And it didn't work. Finally, I went back again, and it was simple as looking at the plugin, and the bass sound, it was just simply, it was, I wish I could describe it, it was like really weirdly filtered, but I figured out that basically, no pun intended, what I was doing was killing all the bass in the song with like everything else I was adding, and just paying more attention to what the filter was doing, like what I was taking out, but also like what the drums were doing. And that's exactly like what you said. It's like all of a sudden, oh, there's the bass. I even tried adding like a sine wave, an octave below it, and all that did was made a mess. And when I finally found it again, it was like finding that sweet spot. It's like, bink, everything opens up. And what's amazing to me, and I'm still, I'm a noob in a lot of these ways, is realizing, it's kind of like what Adam said, is that, when you do that, how it opens up everything else in the mix. And all of a sudden, like one thing, it doesn't have to be bass or whatever, all of a sudden it's like that's gone, and it's like, oh, it's like, it's like in Wizard of Oz when they open up, the color comes in. It's like that. It's like, oh, there's the song. So it's really amazing to learn that. And I think that's something I've been doing in my own focus in the last year, is really learning more of the basic studio tricks I probably should have worked on about 30 years ago, but didn't care about. And now I'm going back and, learning the stuff that Razi already knew, and back in the day, is why he's, the living God that he is.
This is it's a fun experiment to do, like when the song isn't working, like you said, like Adam says, you pull everything out. Just pull it all out and see what's going on. Even pull out the bass. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying a thing now where if a song doesn't feel like it's going to be a hit, or if it doesn't feel like it's going to be a club banger, I will go, okay, I'm going to let it be weird. And I will push it into weird as it possibly can. Because, when you're working on a song, you got that song and you're kicking it around. You don't know where it's going to go. And it's the joy of letting the song be who the song is. Because that's your job. You have to let the song be who it is. Because if you don't, you're going to be forcing it into a hole. I think so anyway. But if you can, if it's not becoming like something that is popular music, let it be weird. Let it be something strange. Let it become this weird thing. Let the drums be odd, weird shit. Let it be creepy.
Yeah. Because
there's something really wonderful in there.
Can I just say something really quick on that, Carl?
Of course, yeah.
that stuff, it, like Let It Be. I mean, I think we have 10,000 bumper stickers from this conversation alone, and I love it. But like, letting it be, that, like I said earlier, biggest, hardest thing I'm doing right now is really listening to a song. I will let it run. Like, I'll get the basic frame down and let it run in the background while I'm like reading or folding laundry and just hearing what comes out. And not, trying to get myself out of the way so that the song can come forward. And so much great stuff comes out of experimentation. Like 2 songs off the top of my head that people were just like, fuck it, let's have fun. The Lion Sleeps Tonight, they did it as a fuck off B-side. And, the rest is history. A less well-known example maybe, but still, I think some of you would definitely know this, is the song White Horse by Laid Back. It's these 2 Danish guys who were doing like, crappy Danish pop in the 80s. And they did White Horse as a B-side, and someone threw it on for kicks on a radio station. And it became not only like an underground sleeper hit, but it's sampled over and over again in hip hop and all other things. And that's just all experimentation. And like, I'm learning now to write songs again as opposed to compositions, because I was doing sort of so much experimental stuff. And it's fascinating for me now. I'm on the other end where like the experimental stuff is like verse A, chorus, verse B, chorus, solo, fade out, like that stuff. Like, Razi very kindly allowed me to remix a song of his, and I was bugging out because I'd forgotten how conventional structure works. And the remix, eventually I figured it out. But it was more back to what you were saying, Carl, was like, let it be weird, and and let it happen. And it's amazing when you get out of your own way and find that everything, like from everything opens up, not just the song, the music, but like the technical stuff, both in terms of like mixing and playing. So thank you.
That's a really interesting, Raziel. I see your hand. Just give me 1 second. It's really interesting, like when you're in that period of, okay, here's the embryonic form of the song. What do you do that will allow it to become what it is? Like what things can you do? What is the process? And once again, like it's always for me, I have to give myself permission to fuck around and find out. And it's kind of be like, okay, I'm getting off the internet. I'm turning all that shit off. Even getting away from the door, if you can, for me anyway. And to just spend several hours mucking around, playing, and to allow yourself that. I don't know why I can't do that. For some reason, there's this thing inside my brain that's going, no, you're not allowed to play. You got to work. You got to work. You got to work. But
can I just real quick to that? I'm so sorry. Every year I make some New Year's resolutions that are really odd and really try to keep them. And this one of the hardest is stop shoulding on myself. And it's just like I have uncovered, and it's not easy, because like when you do that stuff and you really tune into it, you get fucked up. You are like opening up the world to like give you a punch in the teeth. But I've found that like when I do that, I forgot how to experiment. And I've really been doing that more and more, like, turning that knob, I'm afraid to, on the synth. And it sounds like shit, or it sounds really cool. And yeah, like it's just amazing what turns up. I forgot to experiment for the longest time. And my daughter's boyfriend, is the last thing I'll say on this, my daughter's boyfriend is like starting to do more with music. And it's been really fascinating to listen to him play, because he came from a metal background and is now doing like some dance stuff, and it's beautiful. But I've said to him, like, if you do anything, please experiment, fuck up, make mistakes. I said, I spent 20 years not doing that, and I regret it. So do it now. And he's like, oh, thank you. But it's so great when you can let go of that shit, you know? So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't play, if you don't fuck up, you're not making music. Thank you.
Yep.
Raz, I'm going to throw this to you now.
I don't know what I was going to talk about, but the next time Air or Boards of Canada need an album cover, I would like them to contact Alex and just screenshot that shit. It's heavenly.
Yeah, Alex, you've been pulling some great looks today, man. It's great.
Yeah, just a quick one to follow up on what Chang was saying about 3 of the things that got onto my next release are the things that people said, oh, and I also did this. Like, they weren't the main thing, they weren't the requested idea, but they're just these pure excursions and expressions, and the less they had to do with the original source material as a remix and just an interpretation, the happier I was to hear these things. So do that.
I'm in a state of agreement and compliance and brain happy. I've just pinned Alex and I don't know how to unpin Alex. Sorry, Alex. Oh, look, now I've just broken the internet. Hold on, remove pin. Hey, look at me fixing the world. We're getting close to buggering off a clock. Does anybody want to talk about something fantastic that goes for 10 minutes? Or do we want to raid on over to MTV TV? I hope Diana's okay because I'm not seeing her right now.
Can I keep blabbing?
Yeah, sure. Hold on. I see Alex's hand. Can I just throw it to Alex first? Thank you. Alex.
Diana is in the Twitch chat.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Alex, talk to me.
Maybe we can talk about photo licensing, but maybe we can also do that another time. It's not urgent.
Okay. I see Razi's hand.
I don't know if we can really make any answers come to light on that, but is it something you know the original photographer, or is it something through stock, or just the idea of it entirely?
Yes, basically, I found a picture I like. I know the photographer's Instagram handle. Just basically, what should I expect to pay, and what kind of contract would I need to set up?
My quick response is I have had success through either DeviantArt or Instagram or Flickr in the day, contacting the person and saying, hey, can I just use this? It's a small release. I'm not making any money. What do you think? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Low res, not ownership, not exclusive. So I found that people can be amenable to just doing it with credit. Not a professional photographer, not a real licensor of photographic stuff. So I don't know much more than that.
I will say yes, thank you, awesome, and same to what Rezi said. Or option B is if you're feeling crazy, if you can recreate it, because in the process of recreating it, you might create something really cool.
Yeah, maybe.
Try it. Because yeah, try it or not, or just contact them. Whatever, have fun.
I had for some album artists, book covers of a book I wrote. I've done like what Razi said, just, hey, I really like this. What would you consider for using it for like an album cover? And there's a great artist from Germany. I forget what her name is, but she was like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. It's like 200 for the image, and if you sell more than like 1,000 copies, I want another 500. And I was like, great. I like what Carl said about trying to remake it yourself, because that's also a fascinating way to uncover, new possibilities for that art.
Thank you. And here's Adam.
Okay, I'm on. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I have worked in photography studios and that kind of stuff, and do a lot of photography and exhibiting, artists and all that kind of stuff. If you were to ask me for something of mine, I would do what Razi's saying. I would say, sure, go ahead, use it. If it makes any money, throw me some. That's what I did on my How to Train Your Robots. That was a DeviantArt find where I was like, oh, this is exactly what I have in mind, and it's created better than I could make it myself. I reached out to the artist. They were like, yeah, I don't care. And you know, and it is, yeah, it's like mostly people ask for credit. I've done photography that was used on a book cover, and yeah, credit. You know what I mean? It's actually, I think they paid us like a couple $100 because I was shooting an Acrobat. So I think he gave me like $50 to do it, and they paid him like $100 or $150 or something. And you know, it's 20 minutes. It is 20 minutes of shooting, 2 hours of setting up lights. But you know, but yeah, you know, point of it being is that unless you're dealing with a photographer who if you're dealing with a photographer who is accustomed to working in high end like advertising and magazine work and that kind of shit, if you're talking about trying to get an image from a famous living photographer, you're going to have high royalties for that. If you're talking about something where it's like, you know, an amateur sort of thing, or you know, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to end up paying much, if anything. There was one other thing that I did want to say. Oh yeah, there's a lot of free stuff out there, man. And so if you see an idea that you like, there is a strong, so I mean, I myself do this all the time. I go out, I find cheap or free stock. You know, sometimes if I can't find the thing I'm looking for, I jump onto one of the subscription sites and subscribe for a month. I do that a lot for MTV TV with the video stuff. But like, you know, and it's like, yeah, I'm just looking for something. And you know, so if you like doing your own graphic design and that kind of thing, you know, I've kind of turned my ultra simple free cut work kind of remix style. It's like you know, I take this piece from that and this piece from that, and I put them together and they make a whole new thing, right? It's a bricolage, right? You know, bricolage, assembling something out of things. And you know, I've kind of made a style out of that for my stuff. But like, you know, I think every artist, you know, if you start doing that kind of thing where you like, if you really have something in mind, as Carl is saying, or something that you can envision recreating, the resources are out there, man. The resources are out there like crazy. And I mean, let's face it, nowadays, I mean, I'm seeing memes that are pretty great made with AI now, you know what I mean? Did you see the fruit stripe meme? That's hilarious. If you haven't seen the fruit stripe meme yet, you'll see it.
Cool. Thank you. I did an experiment on the new Angelspit remix stuff that I'm doing, where I had I just got people to take a selfie on a black background, turn the lights off, and they had a torch on the side off camera. And it was yeah, and then I just really boosted the colors, and I wanted them to look like criminals. And it was the sort of thing that all you have to do is turn the lights off and take a selfie. That's it, with a torch. And they said, oh, I'm not shaving, I don't have my makeup on. And I went, even better. I want you to look like you're involved in criminal activity and you look really criminally. And that was nice because it was like, here you get to interpret this however you want. I'm going to shut up now. Alex, I'm going to throw it back to you, and I'm looking at 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a small scene thing, so maybe I might be lucky. But my follow-up question is, do I also need to get permission of the mod?
Yes. Quite often it's a 2-for-1. Like the photographer will probably look into it. You may even need them to sign a release form. In fact, you will need to get them to sign a release form.
Okay.
Yes. Did you want to add anything to that, or should I throw it to Aaron?
No, thank you. I will Google release form.
All right, you're the best. Aaron, hit me.
Here's another bumper sticker quote. It is said that a black hole can take the entirety of a city and smash it down into the size of a matchbox. So with that in mind, if you're looking for a photography idea, Alex, you could go a fucking million different routes, but I would say the 0 pointer, that matchbox, would be practical effects. I'm a huge believer in that. I think if you fiddle fuck around with too many video or like After Effects edits, you might drive yourself crazy. But if you get to a point where you're like, how do I replicate this in real time? How do I do things with a camera? How do I do it with a pane of glass, scrap, broken bottle, the world through the lens, through a pane of glass? That can add a new dynamic, or the killer lighting that you have in your room right now, plus atmosphere or haze in a can. So you spray it so it catches all those rays and all those blades. You will come up with some badass shit. And it's all practical effects. I wouldn't sell that short. Before you go poking around or, you start, stressing about all the dynamics or trying to get royalties and usage and you might be able to use an in-camera effect or a very tactile approach to getting an image that you want.
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much. And the concept of using broken glass and anything else and shooting through it, that's a great idea. Thank you, Aaron. We're kind of at time right now. Do we want to, did anybody want to throw anything in the last minute, or?
I just want to say I'm really so thankful for Razi inviting me, and it's great to meet all y'all, and I'm looking forward to more discussions like this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being a part of this, because that leads me so wonderfully into my outro spiel. We do this every Saturday. And then we're going to hang around in the Zoom and chat afterwards. Every Saturday, Art of Rock, it's here, it's now. Brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. Thank you so much for doing my Patreon, my God. And obviously, non-Patreon people are absolutely welcome to be a part of this. Ice Planet 9000 new album is there. Go listen to it. It's also on streaming services. I really hope you like it. The Industrial Incisions playlist is a whole bunch of bands. Some of them are here. Some of the other ones were referenced in that. We need to put Fleetwood Mac on that, I think. Go listen to it. It's bloody awesome. But now we are going to raid on over to MTV TV. Diana, if you can get ready on the hot switch. That's where we're going. So if you're watching this on YouTube or X or Facebook or whatever, click on that link. I just realized I did all of this wrong because I'm a bloody idiot. Click on this link right here. Boom. Oh, look at me. Look at how good I am at life. Bam. Look at my life skills there. That's where we're going. Over to Twitch, and we're going to watch MTV TV because your new favorite band, who you haven't heard yet, is there waiting for you. Twitch is fucking awesome, and MTV TV, I should say, is bloody awesome. Here's Frank. So you guys let me know when we've raided. And otherwise, we're just going to sit back here. I'm going to leave the stream on until I know we've raided. And while we're waiting for the raid to happen, I will bust yours with some really interesting knowledge about the Frankenfurter. That's you. So interesting, as you may be aware, I have recently become the property of a cat. And it's interesting that because I've got this fantastic guy around, I'm good. I'm talking more. I use my voice more because I'm talking to Frank all day and Frank's talking back. As a result, my singing voice has got better. Obviously, because, and this has been in the space of a week, because, when you live alone, you don't use your voice much. I'm going to stop this stream. Go watch MTV TV. Do it now.